I walked across the graduation stage holding years of sacrifice in my hands. While the people who raised me chose to celebrate someone else in another room, they believed degrees could wait and promotions could not. What they never imagined was that the moment they ignored would become the foundation of everything I later became. Please take a moment to subscribe to Nillavoices, where unheard stories finally find a voice. Your support keeps these stories alive, and your presence here truly matters. My name is Vanessa, and the moment I stepped onto the graduation floor wearing a gown that carried years of exhaustion, sacrifice, and silent perseverance, I believed I would finally feel seen by the people whose approval I chased for most of my life. I stood near the edge of the seating area, gripping my program tightly, scanning the rows again and again while my heart insisted that maybe they were simply late, maybe traffic was bad, maybe they were still looking for parking. Relax, my friend Chloe whispered beside me. They will be here. I know, I said quickly, forcing a smile that did not reach my chest. They promised. When the announcer began calling names alphabetically, I checked my phone again, my fingers trembling slightly as I refreshed my messages for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Nothing. I finally called my mother. Where are you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause on the line, the kind that carries hesitation disguised as thought. We are running behind, she said. Just stay calm. Behind where? I wanted to ask, but the call ended before I could speak. Minutes later, my phone vibrated again, this time with a message from my sister. We are at the promotion dinner. I thought Mom told you. My breath caught painfully in my throat. Promotion dinner? I whispered aloud, staring at the screen as if the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. Chloe leaned closer. What is wrong? They are not coming, I said quietly. They chose my sister's promotion. Her eyes widened. They knew today was your graduation. They knew, I replied, feeling something heavy settle into my chest. They just decided this mattered more. When my name was finally called, the applause felt distant and scattered, polite but empty, echoing through a space that should have held familiar faces, familiar smiles, familiar pride. I walked across the stage anyway, because stopping would have meant admitting how deeply this hurt, and I had already learned how to perform strength when it was expected of me. After the ceremony, I stood near the exit holding my diploma, watching families embrace, hearing laughter, mixed with tears of celebration that were never meant for me. My father called. Congratulations. He said, we are proud of you. You are not here. I replied, we had to support your sister. He said, this promotion is a big step. So is this degree. I answered, you will understand one day. He replied, careers matter. So does showing up, I said softly, but he had already ended the call. Later that evening, I confronted them over video call, my diploma still resting on the table beside me. You could have come for even an hour. I said, do not be dramatic, my sister said, smiling faintly. You know how important this was for me. I know, I replied. It was always important for you. My mother sighed. Your graduation was expected, Vanessa. We always knew you would finish, and that made it less worth attending. I asked. No, she said quickly. It just meant it could wait. I stared at them, realization spreading slowly, painfully. Everything about me can wait, I said. That is not what we meant, my father replied. It is exactly what you showed, I said quietly. Memories surfaced without effort. Moments I had dismissed for years, studying alone while my sister's achievements were celebrated loudly. Working part-time jobs while being told education was my responsibility, not their concern. Hearing phrases like you are strong, you will manage, you do not need help. That night, alone in my apartment, I laid my gown across the chair and held my diploma in my hands, tracing the raised letters slowly as tears finally fell without resistance. This was supposed to be my day, I whispered to the quiet room. No one answered, and in that silence, something inside me shifted. I realized their absence was not accidental, not circumstantial, and not misunderstood. It was a choice that told me where I stood. As I sat there holding proof of everything I survived to achieve, I understood something that hurt more than disappointment and lasted longer than anger. This was not just about a missed ceremony. It was the moment I finally saw my family clearly. And once seen, nothing would ever feel the same again. the silence after my graduation did not heal anything, because silence only gave my family more space to justify what they had already decided was acceptable. 2 days later, I sat across from my parents at the kitchen table, where most of my feelings had been minimized. Long before I learned to name them, "You are still upset," my mother said carefully, as if my pain were an inconvenience she needed to manage. "I am not upset," I replied slowly. "I am hurt, and there is a difference. We already explained ourselves," my father said. "Your sister's promotion was time-sensitive, and my graduation was not," I asked. "You can graduate anytime," he replied. "Promotions do not come often. That degree took years," I said. "It did not appear overnight." My sister leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You always make things emotional," she said. "You know how the real world works." "The real world showed up for you," I replied. "It did not show up for me. You are good at school." My mother said gently, "We never worried about you. That was never permission to ignore me," I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay composed. My sister sighed. "You are too idealistic," she said. "Life is about priorities, and I was never one of them," I replied. "That is not fair," my father said quickly. "It is accurate," I answered. They exchanged glances that carried familiarity, the same silent agreement that had always left me standing alone in conversations like this. That night, I met my friend Chloe at a small cafe near campus, my diploma still sitting unopened on my apartment desk. "They did not come?" she asked quietly. "They chose something else," I replied. She shook her head slowly. "That is not normal, Vanessa. They say it is practical," I said. "They say I should understand. You should be celebrated," she replied without hesitation. The next morning, I met with Professor Reynolds to return borrowed materials, and he smiled warmly when he saw me. "I heard about your graduation," he said. "You should be proud." "My family did not think it mattered enough to attend," I replied. He frowned. "That is unfortunate, because your dedication was exceptional." Hearing genuine recognition from someone who had no obligation to care made my throat tighten. Unexpectedly, later that evening, the weight of everything finally collapsed onto me, and I cried on my bedroom floor until my chest ached and my thoughts blurred into questions I could not silence. Why is my success always quieter? Why do I feel guilty for wanting recognition? Why does loving them feel like shrinking myself? I replay conversations from my childhood, moments when my sister's achievements were praised loudly while mine were assumed, expected, and quickly forgotten. "You will be fine," they always said. "You do not need help, you are strong." Strength, I realized, had become an excuse for neglect. When I called my mother later that night, hoping for reassurance I already knew would not come, she said, "You are overthinking this." "I am finally thinking clearly," I replied. "You should not compare yourself to your sister," she said. "I did not," I answered. "You did." There was silence on the line. My sister texted me later. "I did not mean to overshadow you. You know how competitive work can be." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "You did not overshadow me. You were chosen over me." She did not respond. Over the next few days, something subtle began shifting inside me, not strength yet, not confidence, but awareness. I noticed how often my needs were reframed as inconvenience, how often my accomplishments were acknowledged only when they did not require effort from anyone else. I noticed how easily they explained their absence instead of apologizing for it. Sitting alone one evening, diploma finally opened in my hands. I whispered, "Maybe the problem is not my ambition." That thought lingered, uncomfortable but honest. Maybe the problem is that my success does not fit the story they prefer to tell. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that being overlooked was not a reflection of my worth, but of their limitations. That realization did not heal me. It fractured me differently. But inside that fracture, something new began forming. Clarity. And it refused to be dismissed the way I always had been. I did not wake up one morning suddenly strong enough to let go of my family, because strength did not arrive like a gift, but instead grew slowly from exhaustion, disappointment, and the quiet realization that begging for love had become more painful than living without it. The first sign of change came when my phone rang and I did not rush to answer it. "Why are you being distant?" my mother asked later that evening. her voice coated with concern that arrived only after my silence became noticeable. I am not being distant, I replied carefully. I am giving myself space to breathe. You never needed space before. She said, I always did. I answered, I just was not allowed to take it. She sighed. You are punishing us. I am protecting myself, I replied, and the words surprised even me with their steadiness. Over the following weeks, I stopped explaining my decisions, stopped justifying my schedule, and stopped rearranging my life to remain available whenever they decided they missed me. My sister noticed first. You barely call anymore, she said during a brief conversation that felt more like an interrogation than concern. I have been busy, I replied. With what? She pressed. With building a future that does not require permission, I answered, ending the call before she could turn my words into something unkind. During that time, I began meeting regularly with Miss Harper, a career mentor recommended by my professor, who listened without interrupting as I explained my family dynamic in careful, apologetic fragments. You were taught that love must be earned, she said gently. I was taught that love was conditional, I replied. And now? She asked. Now I am unlearning that lesson, I said. She smiled. Distance is not cruelty, Vanessa. Distance is clarity. That clarity followed me as I focused on applications, interviews, and long-term planning, finally allowing myself to imagine a future that did not orbit around my family's approval. One afternoon, my father called unexpectedly. We hardly hear from you anymore, he said. Did we do something wrong? Yes, I replied honestly. You taught me that my achievements were optional. That is not fair, he said quickly. It is accurate, I answered. He was quiet for a moment before saying, families support each other. Only when it is convenient, I replied, and for once, I did not soften the truth to preserve comfort. As my absence grew more noticeable, guilt replaced indifference, and messages arrived with a different tone. We miss you. You have been distant. We are worried. I read them all, feeling neither relief nor satisfaction. Only a calm understanding that concern appeared only after my availability disappeared. One evening, my sister confronted me directly. You think you are better than us now? She asked. No, I replied. I think I deserve peace. You are overreacting, she said. I reacted for years, I answered. Now I am choosing. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat with my planner open, mapping goals instead of apologies, schedules instead of excuses, dreams instead of expectations. I spoke aloud to myself, softly but firmly. I am allowed to step back. I am allowed to grow quietly. I am allowed to stop explaining my worth. When my mother called again days later, her voice trembled. You do not need to shut us out, she said. I am not shutting you out, I replied. I am stepping out of patterns that hurt me. Families compromise, she insisted. I compromised my happiness for years, I answered. This is balance, not abandonment. The silence that followed felt different from before. Not heavy with rejection, but light with resolve. In choosing distance, I did not feel cold or unloving, but grounded, finally standing on something solid that belonged to me alone. I realized that love that demanded silence was never love meant to sustain me, and staying close only guaranteed that I would continue disappearing in spaces where I deserved to exist fully. As I closed my planner and prepared for bed that night, a truth settled into me gently, without anger or fear. Stepping back was not betrayal. It was survival. And for the first time, I understood that choosing myself was not selfish, but necessary, because no one else ever had. The moment my life finally changed did not arrive with applause or announcements, but with an email that confirmed everything I had endured was never wasted, even when no one was watching. Congratulations, the recruiter said during our call, her voice confident and warm. We would like to formally offer you the position. I sat quietly for a moment, gripping the edge of my desk as emotion pressed against my chest. This role is exactly what I studied for, I said carefully. That is why we chose you, she replied. Your background speaks for itself. After the call ended, I whispered to myself, they were wrong, not with bitterness, but with certainty. My first paycheck arrived weeks later, followed by stability I had never experienced, followed by a sense of independence that felt both frightening and freeing. When my mother called after hearing the news through extended family, Her voice sounded different. Softer, almost uncertain. "We heard about your job," she said. "That is impressive." "It is the result of my degree," I replied calmly. "I suppose education does pay off," she said. "It always did," I answered. Soon after, my father asked to meet. "We did not realize how far you had come," he said across the table, his tone filled with something that sounded like regret. "You did not ask," I replied. He nodded slowly. "We should have been there." "Yes," I said, "you should have." My sister arrived late, dressed sharply, her smile familiar but strained. "So this is what you have been busy with," she said. "You really built something." "I always was," I replied. "You just were not looking." She laughed awkwardly. "You know, we never meant to hurt you." "You did not mean to prioritize me either," I said evenly. My mother reached for my hand. "We are proud of you." "I do not need pride after the fact," I replied gently. "I needed presence when it mattered." The table fell quiet. "I spent years believing my value depended on your recognition," I continued. "Now I understand my value existed regardless of your attention." My sister sighed. "You act like we abandoned you." "You did," I replied emotionally. She looked down. "I never thought your degree would matter this much." "That is because it was not for you," I said. No one argued. Later that evening, alone in my apartment, I placed my diploma on a shelf beside my work materials. Not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of resilience, I spoke aloud, slowly, deliberately. "This paper did not save me. I saved me." In the weeks that followed, invitations arrived more often, calls came sooner, and concern appeared where indifference once lived. But I did not rush to fill the space I had left behind. Distance had taught me something essential. Love that appears only after success is not love that sustains. When my mother asked one evening, "Do you think we can start over?" I answered honestly. "We can move forward," I said, "but we cannot erase what happened." "That hurts to hear," she replied. "It hurt to live," I answered. She nodded, finally understanding that comfort could no longer come at my expense. Standing in my kitchen that night, city lights glowing through the window, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not sadness, but peace that did not require permission. I had stopped chasing approval. I had stopped shrinking achievements. I had stopped waiting. Being overlooked forced me to build a life that did not rely on applause. And in doing so, I discovered strength that could not be taken away. The degree they dismissed became my freedom, not because it proved them wrong, but because it proved me right. Sometimes the greatest transformation begins when the people closest to you fail to show up, because absence has a way of revealing truth that presence never could. And in that truth, I finally found myself standing whole, independent, and unafraid to take up space in a world that once asked me to wait.